So as Joe was talking about, this is our Master Control Center. Just to give you a little background, we moved into this facility last September. The monitor wall and the video system that feeds it were actually built by Sonero, designed and built. It's an Everett's MVP that feeds these walls. There's 4 Christie HD projectors, and it's 2 separate 20-foot screens. So you can see, we were talking about earlier with the way the screens are split up. If you look here, these 3 screens are all of the zones in the Philadelphia market. Each one of these smaller windows represents a distinct sales zone, which are, as we mentioned, are broken up geographically. And you can see we've got missing content here. Those are the red squares you're seeing in the white section. So I assume somebody's working on that, right, Dan?
That's sweeps.
Oh, sweep spot. So that's a sweep spot. So what we do, we have a deal with local broadcasters where
That's KYW.
it's KYW runs with us year round. So we run what we call a roadblock, where we block out a specific insertion time across multiple cable networks, and then they send us the content roughly an hour, hour and a half before it's due to air, so they can send us up-to-date copy for the news. So there are probably times when you're flipping around cable networks and all you're seeing are KYW ads if you live in the Philadelphia market.
10 and 11.
So that's why. And they pay a lot of money for that. But you'll see most everything else is looking pretty good. We've got, well, except for Pottsville. But so these screens over here, these 2 sections roughly are Aris insertion systems. Ooh, a laser pointer, nice. So these are all Aris insertion systems, and these are C-Chains insertion systems out in Pittsburgh. So we receive all the content for all these markets here. It's encoded and then distributed out to the insertion system. So we're monitoring all these systems real time. You can see there's a network here taking a break right now. We also, over here on this side, we have What's Up Gold, so we can monitor connectivity to all of our devices at the head ends. And then we also monitor the Dolby DP600 to make sure that the spots are processing through, because every spot goes through there. And you see the encode stations we talked about. They have the Videotech VTM that we use for monitoring audio and video levels. See the LM100, we use the Leach X75 or DPS 575 for setting and correcting video levels. We also use it to fix audio where we get tapes in that only have one channel or have channels that are out of phase, whatever the case may be. We still get probably about 70% of our content's on beta. It's probably less than that though now. It's probably about 30% is electronic, and it's increasing every month. Then we also, these guys are encoding content.
So they have nothing to do with what's on the air?
Yeah, they do. Well, typically, when they're encoding, they'll be focused on encoding. We have standard system checks they do every hour. Like, even though this will display ads running in real time, you really can't see anything. You're looking for patterns, really, because one failure doesn't necessarily tell you anything. It's when you start seeing a pattern, like here, where you know you've got a problem in that zone, because you've got multiple networks that have not received tones for an extended period of time, whereas everything else is clean. So typically, yeah. So typically what will happen is they'll identify the problem here. they'll contact our field engineers who will then start researching it either with cable engineers or with the vendor or with both. So that problem could be a problem with the splicer. Typically it's some type of a network issue or a communication issue with the splicer when we see that across multiple networks like that. But we know, you can tell it's right off the bat it's not a network problem because it's not happening in any of the other zones in the market. That? What?
Looking at these sections here, it's like everything is like relatively uncluttered and stuff, except for sort of 3 areas there. Three, yeah.
These?
Yeah. What's happening here that's so different than the others? What are the various layers? You've got, like 3 rows here, and then you've got 4 rows there.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure what's going on there. That's one that somebody needs to investigate. Not sure why we have that, but
relatively
yeah.
Are those just small ads or small?
No, it's. Oh, you mean it's just more compressed, or
are they shorter?
No, there's no. It's just the block is just indicates an event. It doesn't. You have no idea how long that event is. It could be a 2-minute break. Could be a 1-minute break. There's nothing on the screen. Nothing you see on the screen indicates the duration of a break.
Okay, that's just like. But you're looking at what, 3 breaks coming up, or there's.
Yeah, there's 4.
Or 4 breaks.
4. Each row is an event coming up.
Okay.
Yep.
Seeing that up there just for anything to be up there.
Anything could be up there, yeah. We provide the cable boxes just so that if like say if CNN was no toning in multiple zones, we could put it up and see if there was a news event going on.
Put that up, whatever that problem is.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, depends. It depends on where it's occurring. Right now, we have these boxes are fed off the Coatesville head end. So we can only look at the Coatesville head end through here, but we have sling boxes at every head end. So if there's an issue, we can go right into any head end and look at problem there.
Pick up on network.
But that would be done at one of the workstations, not up on the wall. Any other questions? All right, we'll go. Yeah.
Do any of these trouble spots, do you have alarms in front of one console, or does this depend all on human eyes?
This all depends on human eyes.
Wow.
There are also email alerts and different SMPTE traps for splicers out in the field. There's a variety of different things. For this kind of stuff, there's email alerts, you can do pager alerts, and it doesn't.
For major malfunctions, there are SNMP traps that'll catch it, but for routine failures, like missed tones, like you're seeing up here on occasion.
Traps, do you have a network management system that logs all this?
Yeah, Comcast has what we call local management centers in several locations in the division that monitor those traps coming in and have contact lists for who to alert if there's an issue.
They have a product called Spectre that does all this.
Where'd all the software come from?
This is all Aris.
Well, it's Aris and Sea Change, the actual displays.
Dolby did the What's Up Gold is actually a little company called What's Up Gold.
Is any of this customized for you? Or is it all of it customized for you? Or is this?
Depends on how you want to think about it.
You find this?
We were one of the first sites to deploy digital ad insertion back in the day.
Yeah.
We were the first for Comcast, so we helped the vendors develop some of the different ideas.
Right.
It's not customized, but they use some of our ideas that are widely used in the service.
So we're trying to get them to make it more customizable, but
Yeah.
Because I mean, the goal would be to have the system be able to like identify something like that and say, all right, I'm seeing a pattern, somebody needs to look at this. So yeah, right now that capability doesn't exist, so it's all requires human intervention to pick up those patterns. But fortunately, I mean, it's still, even with this much information up there, it's still pretty apparent.
And also make it sophisticated that you can override it, because then in that situation where there is a plane crash or there is something that goes along, any of the techs out in the field are going to get inundated with false alarms. Sure.
You want to add anything about the video wall?
I don't know if you wanted to mention that you actually had additional zones. You selected the zones that you actually want to see up there, and you can see them really in any size, format, whatever.
Yeah, one of the things, that's a good point to point out, is that there's also a Crestron front end for the eVerts control system. So it's designed so that we can, because there's actually more stuff that we're going to add. So it's designed to be configurable so that we can set up a scheduled rotation, so we can rotate different views through. But also that if there is a problem with the zone that we want to take a closer look at, we can expand that, up to the full size of one of the projectors if we want to take a closer look at something.
You mentioned, I heard somebody say something about a 5 o'clock cutoff. Is that pretty much when your schedulers go home?
Yeah.
So after 5 o'clock, that schedule for the next, 12 hours, casting concrete cannot change?
Yes and no. It can be if it absolutely has to be, but typically not. And typically what happens is there's with the traffic system, as Joe mentioned, juggling all the spot content and the avails, there's a process called dynamic scheduler that's continually running, that's placing spots optimally based on their value and priority. And then what happens is traffic will be taken in orders and processing them throughout the day. And then, they have a cutoff point, probably, it's not a hard deadline, I would say typically around 3 o'clock, where they cut it off, they finalize the schedules and then export them, and then we send them out.
But there's a premium paid for prime time slots.
Yes. There's a premium paid based on the network, based on the price the customer paid for the spot, and based on the priority of the spot. Like for example, typically a political spot is going to be the highest priority, and it's going to bump everything else out of the schedule. So like last year, what happened was, we gave our clients advance warning, telling them, look, probably for the month of October, your spots aren't going to run, and so we move them. We'll give them, move them to other networks if we can, offer them other, incentives to move spots around. So, but yeah, the schedule process is very dynamic throughout the day, right up until the end of the day. Any other questions?
One more from a personal observation. When you see a spot here 2-3 times consecutively, how does it happen?
What's that?
How does it happen in a system like this? It can't happen in a system like this?
Typically it can't happen. The system is set up to not allow a spot to play back-to-back. It's possible, it depends. You could have we have clients that do bookends, they do 15-second spots on either side of a 30. So, it could be the same spot on either side of the 30. But typically you won't see the exact same 30-second spot back-to-back. We'll move on to the data center.
Let's see, where's going to be the least loudest place? It's probably over here. Just nobody touch any of the buttons, there are cameras. I'll know exactly who it was.
Name's in pocket.
Sorry.
Assume that you have multiple power backups.
Yes and no. We do for everything except the generator and the transfer switch. But they are broken out into A, B. The actual facility uses a lot of different methodologies to back itself up and re-redundant. From an electrical perspective, there's 2 racks at the back of this row, the B row and the C row. They're FDCs. Why they're called FDCs, I don't know. They should be called EDCs, electrical distribution cabinets, but they call them FDCs. That's a Liebert question. But basically, they're the breaker panels for each one. Out of each set of breaker panels, there's a red and a blue, which are electrical whips. Each whip feeds each rack having the 2 whips, 30 amps at 220 service. Only 2 racks in the facility have 110 power. So mostly everything is 220. Only kept the 110s around for some legacy gear I couldn't get rid of.
Power generating.
The whole facility can go up to 600 amps at 220 at this point.
Does that keep air conditioning going too?
Trying to think, hold on. No, it does not. Air conditioning is separate from that.
So a room like this could start to blow up when the temperature rises.
Yeah.
Under a long power failure.
Yes, well that's why we have the air conditioners are not on battery backup. The 600 amps is to the battery backup. The air conditioners are off the UPS, but are on the generator. On the generator, yeah. The 2 air conditioners there each do 20 tons of air. The room right now, we're actually in the middle of a transition. We have to add another AC unit shortly. The room right now is at 26 tons of air. We only have 40 tons of air. We lose 1 air conditioner. We're in a world of problems. So we're getting another air conditioner so we can stay back at the point where we could lose an air conditioner and still keep the site on.
Have you calculated how many days you can be out without Philadelphia Electric?
48 hours.
That's all?
That's it. But we had contracted a diesel company to be out here within 4 hours.
So then as long as the generators hold up, it's eternal then?
Yes. With the exception of a possible generator failure. You can only justify so much money when building a room like this at one time. So the next justification is getting a second generator and a second transfer switch, and the second UPS is coming when the second air conditioner comes. So each leg, each FDC will feed off of each UPS, thusly going back to both transfer switches and those generators.
Nowhere nearly as robust as what the networks are.
It depends on whether certain...
Because the stuff on the street in your house is down anyway after 48 hours. My TV is off after,
Yes, but when you're feeding such a large area, the power failure could just be local.
But keep in mind too, is that all of our stuff is file store forward. So our inserters can run for as long as they have schedules, which is typically 48 to 36 hours, out with no communication back to this room. Then when we come back online, we can pull all the data back and not miss a beat.
Chances are within 48 hours you're going to be up UPS running again.
Exactly. We'd love to be able to justify 2 generators and all of that equipment, but to this point in time, with the equipment that's in here, we're getting more and more in here. This is increasingly becoming it's not a huge data center, but for Spotlight, we're increasingly putting more and more stuff in here, which will then dictate that capital expenditure.
Choices of distribution of the signal leaving here that has multiple paths to get to the...
Absolutely, great question. All the fiber is probably about 95% dispersed or diverse. The 5% is in this room. We connect to the Comcast data center, to 2 different data centers from this room. So you'd actually have to take out a pole all the way to the north and all the way to the south, and most of it's actually underground. So the fiber ring from here is 100% diverse.
Now, if both of those should be taken out, could another center take over the load?
Well, either of those are redundant upon each other. They'll instantly kick in. We don't have a third fiber. At that point, we'd have to have a tornado strategically hit both ends.
When I worked for CBS in New York, Hollywood was our backup. So Hollywood could feed the entire country, Washington could feed the entire country, or New York could, with all of the same chosen spots backed up at all 3 locations.
Well, interesting. Now, that's a different situation than this facility going down. We're actually in the process of moving most of our building a redundant facility in Philadelphia on Broad Street, where we actually have those two units, that row of units over there are actually SANS and NAS setups, where we'll have complete traffic system redundancy. We'll eventually go to insertion system redundancy that'll be fed out of 401 North Broad, which is a SunGuard facility, which the chances of that getting totally shot are slim to none. It's built in an old tank factory. So we'll have site redundancy probably in another year. But it's very expensive to do site redundancy. You got to take baby steps with that.
In case of failure here, you actually aren't losing content on the network. You're just potentially losing ad revenue.
We lose the ability. No, we lose the ability to refresh or update content. We can update schedules, but any new content would be a lot harder to reach all the areas.
Right. So you actually are just potentially after 48 hours of failure, essentially you're potentially losing just ad revenue. You're not actually dropping service to my home, in fact.
No, because that's what we did is that depending on how how the catastrophe or the issue happens, each one of our insertion sites is set up that it has a redundant out in the field that we can fail over to in another location for the actual inserters, but it also has redundancy between the threshold of what we bill for. So if one site goes down, the other site picks it up, it shouldn't break any thresholds of any contracts.
Now, programming content to these sites comes in multiple paths as well?
Yes, it's either fed from strategic sites that are around Comcast, one being a massive head end in Newcastle, Delaware, another one being a large distribution facility in Plainfield, another one being in White Marsh and Alexandria. They all have the ability to send multicast video all around. We also are fed from satellite from the CMC in Denver. So we can take any one of those feeds to bring back programming. So
the likelihood of losing that is nil.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to run into your miscellaneous node issues from lightning strikes, car accidents, fiber breaks, somebody lighting the fiber on fire and watching it melt because it's fun. We've heard it all pretty much. But yeah, I mean, you'll lose connectivity that way to individual nodes, but for the most part, it's pretty hard to take a whole system down minus a major catastrophe, and even then, your time to resolution's not that bad.
You have fiber, right?
Yes. We have leased fiber, we have our fiber, but for the most part it's Comcast fiber, especially in this area because they got most of it from Suburban. They built a lot of their own, then when the Suburban Comcast purchase happened, they got a lot of, Suburban had an infrastructure ring in there.
Buried or not?
It's both. It depends on the area. It really does. Comcast buried a lot of fiber. Suburban had some overhead. Suburban buried a little bit. There's a mix and match. When they merged the companies, they got a lot of fiber in a lot of different areas.
I would assume now the servicing of any one piece of equipment is just remove it, replace it, and send it back to the factory?
No. All of our engineers are Dell certified, so they can work on any server. Dell will ship us the parts in under 4 hours, and we'll do motherboard replacements, drive replacements, any of that stuff.
Pretty hard maintenance then.
Yes. All the EMC stuff is on a call system. The EMC detects an error, it'll call EMC, they'll notify us, they'll arrive here with the part, we'll do the replacement. So yeah, it's fairly robust.
Is that shop just manned 9 to 5?
9 to 5, but we all carry cell phones and we're here during maintenances, and we were moving power cords this morning at 6 a.m. You know, we're here when we need to be here. So we're really 24/7 with, you know, the 9 to 5 hours.
Okay.
So we do all that. But yeah, mostly even I mean, data center stuff, hot cold methodology, racks facing in, so all the hot air gets sucked through the racks, pushed out into the hot aisles. We use the ceiling as the return to get to the air conditioners, where it takes all the hot air, blows it back to the floor again. Moisture sensors in the floor, so if there's a leak, they run through the pan of the air conditioners. We'll get notified from a call or an email saying, hey, you have moisture in the data center floor. It'll tell us what zone it is and what foot it is. So we can look at maps and say, okay, I can tell that the air conditioner, God willing we haven't had this happen, I can tell that the air conditioner 1 has a leak in its pan, because I can tell where the square footage is of area 1. So yeah, and it's a notification system. All of this stuff, the Liebert UPS from the air conditioners are all networked. So we can actually go in over our internet and basically catch all the sites of these to monitor errors, to monitor different things that we come across. We had an issue when the air conditioners were first installed that the coolant units on the top had were not manufactured properly, one of them wasn't, and one of the coils was rubbing against the side of the housing. Well, it caused a small pinhole which decreased pressure to the compressor. We instantly got alerted about that, called them and had them down here. It shut the compressor down to save the compressor, and they were out within a couple of days with a new compressor. Each air conditioner has 2 compressors, so everything is, is fairly up.
Filtration of the air, do you do anything special with that?
There's filters that are built into the air conditioners. Not really. It's got filters inside it. It's also got humidification.
Humidity is more a concern than
Yes.
dust particles.
Well, what also we do is we try to, through our maintenance plan that we have with the company that built this, we come in, we have them, clean the floor. We handle most of the racks, dustless vacuums, that kind of thing. They do the floor, they do underneath the floor, they do the top of the racks, all that stuff, so we get as little dust in here as possible. This is actually probably the dirtiest it's been in about 3 months because we've been moving equipment in and out. New servers at this point are a weekly occurrence, and the move to virtual servers has been a big thing for us. We're trying to get as close to virtualization. We probably have well over 150 regular servers and probably about another 25 virtual servers using VMware.
Primarily Linux, VMware, or Microsoft?
Linux VMware using ESX, basically so that you'll boot from SAN. So what we do is we leave the Linux OS, typically using Dell 2950s. We'll leave the Linux OS on there, boots directly from SAN. So if we ever have an outage, the OS and more importantly the registry is preserved. We have a couple of applications that are real registry intensive. So the ability to, when they do patches, they make changes, to preserve the registry outside of saving it off is better for us. So we keep everything from SAN. We then replicate those images to our disaster recovery site. So if we have a hardware problem, it's as simple as pulling the server back out, putting a new server in, setting up Linux, quickly IPing it, turning it on, and starting the image right away. So we have a very quick turnaround time with that. Most of the stuff that you saw in my part of the presentation where we had transcoders and that kind of stuff, most of our transcoders are built on the ESX platform so that, they're either array-based, so they're clustered, and they're on ESX, so if we lose a node, the system stays up. It just runs a little slower than it should. It gives us the time to swap equipment. It also gives us the ability to break the cluster if we need, if for some reason we need to do an upgrade that we're worried about, or we don't have time to test as thoroughly as we want to. We'll break the cluster. We'll upgrade that node, test that node for a couple of days, then upgrade the other side. So we'll keep one on production, we'll use one as a test and then merge them together while having copies of the image on the SAN. We're roughly running in the SAN probably about 10, 11 terabytes right now. By the end of the month, we'll be up to probably about 25.
Giant leap forward.
What it is we're as we get more we only started doing electronic ingestion later last year, and the ability for a production company, Dubhouse Agency, to send us a file FTP and chew up maybe 3 minutes transmitting a larger file versus the $12 for the tape and then another $5-6 to UPS it per tape saves them a lot of money, so it's really advantageous. We offer the service to them, so it's really no cost to them, and they can, they don't have to spend any money for tape and for shipping. And then at that point, the decks eventually go away, because if they shoot everything in a digital format, move it onto a hard drive on their editor, they can just edit it together and ship it to us right away. Plus, it cuts down on lead times. Where the client needs to get a spot on the air, something changed, new sale, new price.
Noticed that with the political campaigns, that the production of spots followed an event very quickly.
They do. In most cases, they're editing them in the fly. I mean, if you look at VOD, what Comcast and the Eagles do with VOD, they're taking content from the games, they're putting it together real time. It's on the platform maybe an hour, a couple hours later in that chopped up version of highlight reels. I mean, everybody's now, they're sitting in an editor in the stadium chopping everything together as the game's going on.
It's going,
Yeah, so it makes it real easy to grab a fiber connection and send it out.